There is a place that belongs to all of us, a place with a beauty all its own, a place graced by the presence of trailblazers, from Winston Churchill to the Dalai Lama, Audrey Hepburn to Masai Ujiri and the Toronto Raptors. Visionaries, leaders, artists, storytellers, athletes. Those who come here with purpose, with lifetimes packed full of experience and unique perspectives. Not all were in the history books. Not every one a household name, but every voice important. This is a place that has the power to connect us all, a place that leaves us inspired, stirred, and most importantly, thinking differently. It's the go-to place for conversations that matter. And while this place has no fixed address, it is here, on this stage, at this podium, that our most valuable national resource lives: open dialogue. Join us here as we share the ideas that drive this nation forward. Join us in this place. Welcome to the club, the Empire Club of Canada.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Empire Club of Canada. I'm Jenna Donaldson, and it is my great pleasure to be chair of the board of the Empire Club and your host for today's event. To begin, I want to acknowledge that we are gathering on the traditional and treaty lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit and the homelands of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. We encourage everyone to learn more about the traditional territory on which you work and live. And I'd also like to recognize a number of elected officials in the room. I think there are quite a few of you, so I'm just going to ask everyone to give us a round of applause and ask you to stand while we recognize. Thank you very much for being here with us today. Today is just the second event of our new season, and what a great event it is already. As you saw in our welcome video, there's a new energy here at the Empire Club, and it's captured in our theme for the year, Leading the Change. Each season of the Empire Club is another building block in a 121-year history of being not just a place where important and consequential discussion happens, but I believe the place where it best happens. Since 1903, our club has been a space for leaders, influential voices, and trailblazers, from everyday Canadians to provincial, national, and global leaders, to share ideas, debate policy, and spark change. And it's been a personal joy to see how these conversations that we have hosted ripple outward and influence the public discussion here in Canada. That's why I'm so energized for the upcoming season that we have ahead. And today's event is no exception. We have with us Marit Stiles. Leader of Ontario's official opposition, and of course, leader of the NDP and MPP for Davenport. Today's discussion is the first in our Ontario Leader Series. And in this series, we'll hear what our provincial leaders envision, or in some cases, reimagine, for Ontario's future. While this address is the first in our series, Marit joins a rich tradition of opposition leaders delivering important messages from our podium, usually messages of change, and I'm sure she'll have lots to say about that. But before we dive in, as a nonprofit organization, we would like to recognize our sponsors who generously support these events and make complimentary viewing possible for our online audience. Thank you to our lead sponsors, the Ontario Federation of Labour, Provincial Building and Construction Trades Council of Ontario. And thank you to our VIP reception sponsors, Aurora Strategy Global and Nuclear Waste Management Organization and the Society of United Professionals. We appreciate you. And thank you to our supporting sponsor, the Ontario Real Estate Association. And thank you to our lead season sponsors, Bruce Power and Hydro One. Thank you as well to our VIP reception season sponsor, Waste Connections of Canada. Give them one more. And finally, thank you to our print media partner, the Toronto Star. If you have questions for our speakers, please scan the QR code found in your program, or if you're online, through the Q&A function. For those of you online, if you require technical assistance, please start a chat with our team using that function on the right-hand side of your screen. To kick things off, it is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Laura Walton. Laura Walton is the president of the Ontario Federation of Labour, Canada's largest provincial labour federation. She was elected to the position in 2023, and prior to that, she served as the president of the Canadian Union of Public Employees, Ontario School Boards Council of Unions. I think I know why you go by OSBCU. In addition to her role with OSBCU, Laura also served on the QP Ontario Executive Board, and she is proud of her rural roots, growing up in Belleville, where she worked in radio and marketing and supported children with special needs as an educational assistant. So please join me in welcoming to the stage Laura Walton.
We're at an age now where these have to go on, so here we go. Good afternoon, friends, and thank you for joining us here today. As mentioned, my name is Laura Walton, and I'm the president of the Ontario Federation of Labour. Before we begin, I would just like to take a moment to thank the workers with Unite Here 75 for all of their hard work today. Just a shout out, an amazing meal, amazing service. On behalf of 1 million workers from 54 unions affiliated with the OFL, I am honored to introduce Marit Stiles, leader of the NDP, Ontario's official opposition. Marit understands workers' issues. From fighting for workers at the bargaining table with ACTRA to her role as an education critic, where I learned so much and became very close with her, to her current role as the official opposition leader, she knows what working people need. She sees our issues firsthand. When there's a picket line, Marit is at that picket line. When there's a rally, Marit is at that rally. And when we need her in the community, Marit is there as well. Marit knows that when everyone can afford to have a good life, when we can afford a roof over our head, and when our public services are accessible to all, life is better for everyone. This afternoon, Marit is going to talk about reimagining Ontario's future. We are at a critical moment in this province. Healthcare wait times are far too long, our classrooms are overcrowded, and things are still too expensive. Right now, we need imagination. Right now, we need hope. Right now, we need a bold vision. And those are all things that Marit embodies. At the Ontario Federation of Labour, we're in the middle of a cross-province tour. As a matter of fact, today after we're done, Jamie West and I are heading back on our next round of carpool karaoke to head back up to Sudbury. We are traveling to 11 cities to engage communities in dialogue about building the Ontario we need. Last week we were in Kingston and Ottawa. We were just in Sault Ste. Marie. We're now heading back to Sudbury. We're over halfway through this tour. We have met hundreds of workers and community members, And what I'm hearing in those town hall meetings is that people are struggling. People are struggling with healthcare, with affordability, with housing, and they're not lazy, they're ready to fight. They don't want the next 4 years to be a repeat of the last 6. They're ready to rally behind a new vision, a vision I know that Marit and the NDP can provide. Marit has been on a similar tour to hear from communities across the province. This afternoon, she's going to share her roadmap and transformative vision to navigate the province under an NDP government. I'm ready, and I know you are ready for new energy and fresh solutions. We're ready to reimagine Ontario's future. And with that, I am absolutely delighted to introduce a dear friend of not just mine, but of workers across Ontario, Marit Stiles.
Thank you so much, everyone. As you can see, Laura and I coordinated today, as we always do. I don't know if everybody else here got the memo, but today it's green. But listen, hello, good afternoon, bonjour tout le monde. Thank you so much for joining us here today. And thank you, Laura, for that introduction. And thank you to the Ontario Federation of Labour and the Ontario Building Trades for co-sponsoring today's conversation. And of course, to the Empire Club for hosting me. And I have to give a shout out as well to the amazing workers at Unite Here Local 75 for putting this all together for us. A lovely meal. Thank you so much. But look, these are fitting sponsors for this discussion because we can't build the future we want for Ontario without the energy of workers who will actually build it. So thank you, and thank you all for being here. We're also joined today by several of the members of my team from the official opposition NDP caucus today. And I know they already stood up once, but I'd love to get the MPPs that are here to stand up again. Stand up again, my friends. Thank you. I gotta tell you, you will not find harder working MPPs in any party, and I am so inspired by them every day. Serving as Ontario's official opposition is a responsibility that we take very, very seriously. And while I will say this government has given us plenty to oppose, we take our responsibility to propose just as seriously. C'est notre responsabilité de développer et d'encourager une meilleure vision pour l'avenir de l'Ontario. And that's why I was glad to have this opportunity to share with you just a little peek. I was told I was going to provide the roadmap, but just so you know, we've got 10 minutes here. So it's going to be a little peek into my vision for Ontario's future and why I have hope as well that a better future isn't only possible, but it's within our reach. Now, some of you may know this, but I am not originally from Ontario. In fact, like about 30% of the population, I was born outside this province. And in my case, I grew up in Newfoundland, and I'm proud of those roots. And when I came of age, like so many others of my generation, I looked west. I came to Ontario for school, and I stayed because I found something I didn't have back home: opportunity. Now, it wasn't a problem-free paradise, but Ontario was, without question, the economic engine of our country. A place where you could get a good job, and you could make enough money to live. You could afford a home and support a family. You could have a family doctor. You could count on a good public education for your kids. Ontario was a place with a sense of possibility. Now, my partner Jordan, sitting over there, and we've raised our girls here. And I've worked in many sectors since I arrived here, right? Government, on the side of workers and labor, health policy. I even started a small business doing communications work. But it was my experience as a parent that led me to fight for better childcare, for better schools for my kids, and then to run for school trustee at the TDSB. And, in 2017, in the face of, I will say it, liberal school closures and cuts to education, I took the leap to provincial politics. Now, as leader of Ontario's NDP, I have the honor and the opportunity to make even bigger change, because I think that we can all agree that something has to shift in our province. So, in my role, I have the privilege of traveling all around our beautiful province. It is so beautiful. But I hear the same things over and over again and again. It feels like my kids are going to be worse off than I was. It feels like we're going backwards. You hear it everywhere. The worry about next month's bills, about making rent, worry about how much higher the grocery bill is going to be this time when you go to the store, wondering whether we need to cancel our kids' soccer to save a bit. These are the kinds of hard choices that people are making every day, and I see it in big cities and small towns. And you see it in the economic indicators too. This year, Ontario is once again the recipient of equalization payments. Think about that. I cannot imagine, telling my younger self growing up in Newfoundland that Ontario, the powerhouse of the Federation that I left Newfoundland for, a province so rich in resources and talent, would become a have-not province. And I will tell you this, it is something no Ontario Premier should be proud of. But here's the thing that I want to share with you today. These conditions are not inevitable, and it is not something that we have to accept. In fact, I refuse to. I know we can turn this around, because often in the same places where life is the hardest is where I see signs of hope. Je vois plein de signes d'espoir à travers les communautés de l'Ontario. I see people all across this province working hard and taking pride in what they've built. I see the talent and the drive and the creativity in our people all across the province. And the solutions to the big problems that we face are there right in front of us. So my message to Ontarians is this: my friends, it is time for better. You deserve a government that has the vision, the drive, and the focus to take on our most pressing challenges. You deserve a government that stands up for you. I want to share a little bit with you today about one aspect of my vision for Ontario, because I'm very focused these days on something that I think will make one of the biggest impacts on our economy, on the future of Ontario, and that is, it is housing. Before I get to that, I do want to say one other thing, though, which is that I really believe as well that you need a government that understands that kickstarting the economy is about more than putting up open for business signs and hoping for the best. You know, you deserve a government that understands, and I'm going to borrow here from an executive that I met not that long ago at Ericsson when I was checking in with the tech sector in Canada. This CEO said to me, "You deserve a government that understands that we cannot attract the talent, the people to come here and bring their families and skills unless we can provide the social infrastructure." And that means the schools, the transit, the healthcare, and yes, the housing. You deserve leadership that understands that stability and partnership foster strong economic development, and that chaos and cronyism do not. Yeah. So, a better future for the province that we all love, it starts with a government that's going to get the basics right. And this was, I think, the point that the CEO from Ericsson was making with me. You get the basics right. You live up to its responsibilities, and you focus on what's most important to working people, ordinary people. That's why I'm going to keep emergency rooms open and make sure that everybody has access to primary care, because, you know, at a minimum, people deserve this. I'm going to change how our schools are funded so that instead of jamming our kids in like sardines, we can get them the support that they need for a great start in life. And I'm going to make sure that our energy sector continues to provide the affordable, sustainable electricity and good union jobs that we need to fight climate change and power our economy. So these are the priorities for me, but as I mentioned, I do want to talk today to focus in a little bit on a part of our plan that I think is going to have the biggest impact on our province's present and our future, and that is housing. Making sure that people have a decent home, you know, one that they can actually afford, is a fundamental responsibility of any government. But despite what I think is really a political consensus that we're in a housing crisis, Ontario is falling behind. And in fact, and I got to tell you, this is really scary to me, housing starts are down. Construction is slowing. And so are the new opportunities for tradespeople and other workers. Doug Ford's plan, which I will say it, I think privileges a few developers, tried to crack open the greenbelt for luxury sprawl, but it hasn't worked. It turns out that actually leaving it entirely to the market won't get the job done. Sometimes the market needs a nudge. So here's what I'm going to do. As Premier, I will unlock public lands and marshal the funds that we need to build housing that people can actually afford. We're going to get government back in the business of building homes, right? Nonprofit, cooperative, supportive, public, right across the province. It's part of a plan that we're calling Homes Ontario. You know, and it's something we used to do well in this province. But the last time we built nonprofit housing of any significance at all was in the early 1990s. In fact, by 1995, some of you will remember, along with me, that it was stopped when federal and provincial governments decided to stop, frankly, planning for the future. I mean, all you have to do is look at Toronto, where we are right now. In the early 90s, Toronto was building about 5,000 affordable housing units a year. And if it hadn't been slashed, we'd have 150,000 affordable units here by now. That's, guess what, just about the exact number we're short today. Think how much better off we'd be. And while I'm at it, I want to give a shout out to our new mayor, who I think really gets the urgency of this. Mayor Chow is breaking ground on almost 5,000 new units right now. And if she had a strong partner at Queen's Park, she And all the municipal leaders who want to get this done all across Ontario, they could do even more. With real leadership on housing, we can tackle one of the key issues that I hear about so often, the retention of skilled labor. Homes Ontario is going to help bring stability and certainty to the sector with positive outcomes for private development too, because tackling a crisis this big is an all-hands-on-deck moment. Public sector, private sector, not-for-profit. We can help get people housed with options that meet every need, and the economy will be better for it. This plan of ours is a centerpiece of a new housing policy, but I don't want you to think that that's all that's needed. I listen to the experts. I will say some of them are here with us today. And we're going to bring in other concrete measures to boost supply, like legalizing fourplexes, right? Like bringing in measures that are going to protect our existing affordable supply, and so much more. I'm not afraid to get this done, and I'm not beholden to anyone but the people of this province. So, folks, listen, we have a lot left to talk about. And I'm looking forward to getting a chance to connect with all of you, as many tables as I can get to today, and of course to my conversation with Steve Paikin, who we're very excited is here with us today. But I want to leave you with this. People of this province deserve a government that will take on the big challenges we are facing with courage, and a government that will chart a course for a better future. Not making decisions just with the next 4 years or the next election in mind, but the next few decades, and for our future generations. We need a premier who has the vision and the focus to see it through. I'm running to be that premier. Thank you. Merci et miigwech.
Thank you, Marit, for that energized speech and for sharing your vision for our province with us. I think everyone here, regardless of political leanings, recognizes how much courage and conviction it takes to step up, to put your name on a ballot, to run for leader and cast a vision like this. It's hard work and it's inspiring. And so I wanted to say thank you because we are so grateful to you for doing it. Now I'd like to introduce someone who is a leader of a different sort. For decades, Steve Paikin has been a giant, literally and figuratively, in Ontario political journalism.
That's enough.
You all know Steve.
That's right. So we don't
As the senior editor of TVO's Agenda. Please join me in welcoming him to our podium.
That's it. Good. Thank you. I don't want to take away your time to do this. Okay, a couple of housekeeping things off the top. First of all, happy birthday last week.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks.
Second of all, in the interest of full disclosure, we should say you have not seen the questions ahead of time.
That's right.
I have not provided the questions to your team ahead of time. This is a spontaneous conversation. So we put that on the record. And also, they've given me a little phone here so that I'm going to start it off, but then get your questions here so we can get this audience involved in it as well. And I thought, since you were a little autobiographical off the top, we might just start there.
Okay.
Because I'm going to look for a show of hands here. How many people in this room know one other person named Marit? Hands up.
Yeah.
You do? You really do?
Wow.
Wow.
Story of my life.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe we need a short explanation off the top about that.
All right, okay. So, So when I was born, my parents were expecting a boy. Now, they didn't have an ultrasound. They had no good reason to believe that, but they were expecting a boy. And when I wasn't a boy, they had no ideas for a girl's name. So they asked their best friends, who happened to be from Norway, what was a good Norwegian name? And I ended up with Marit. So I am not Norwegian. And I can tell you that people find it, hard to pronounce, but it was even harder when I was growing up in Newfoundland, let me assure you. So, yeah.
When did you become a New Democrat and why?
Well, I think, when I was growing up, my family and my parents were not partisan by any means, not political like that. They were, but they cared about what I would now call social justice, civil rights. They cared about the environment. We farmed in an outport not too far from St. John's. And so it kind of was in my blood a little bit to have that social justice leaning, to think, it was my role in life to help my neighbor. I think that was a big part of the principle of us growing up. And frankly, a lot of what I saw growing up in Newfoundland too, right? People having a hard time in a lot of those communities, struggling a lot, especially when I was growing up. And then when I went on to university, it was during the end of the apartheid era. So I got very active in sort of anti-apartheid stuff, and then I ended up, but I will tell you how it really happened. I walked in to the cafeteria at Carleton University, and I walked right in, and this pretty cute guy handed me a flyer. It was an NDP flyer, and I said, oh, thank you. And then I looked up and I said, wait a minute, I know you. And by the way, he is still with me to this day. But if I'm honest, it had a little more to do with romance than anything else, yeah.
So is that to say that if Jordan Berger were a conservative, you would be today as well?
Good God, no.
Oh. Just checking. Okay, just checking. Okay, here comes one of those sort of the view from 35,000 feet, airy-fairy political science questions.
Okay.
We've had 43 elections in Ontario history.
Yes.
Liberals or Conservatives have won 41 of 43. The NDP has only ever won one, 1990. The United Farmers won another one in 1919. For whatever reason, when people choose governments in this province, they almost always only think about two options. What can you say to the people in this room, some of whom I suspect feel that, and beyond this room, who just think New Democrats are not an option, and therefore they don't think of you that way?
Well, first of all, it is absolutely my job to convince people of that very thing. And don't think that I don't know that that's an obstacle for us. But I think we're in a moment where we are facing such enormous challenges in this province. And I don't think we got here overnight. I don't think we got here just over the last 6 years. I think this is the moment when we need some bold change, when we need a new vision for Ontario. I see it in the young people that I feel are really connecting to our message. And I am going to be asking people to unite around the vision and the values of the New Democratic Party in this next election, because I truly believe we are also the only party that can defeat this government. We're ready to do it. We have a team of incredible experience. And when people say to me, well, you haven't been elected that much here in Ontario, I say, look west. Look at what NDP governments have managed to achieve. Look at fiscal responsibility in that region. Look at the amazing things that are happening in BC under David Eby, or in Manitoba under Wab Kinew. We could have that here. We just need to unite behind a party that I think shares the same values that so many Ontarians share.
Admittedly, this is only a snapshot, and there's all sorts of ways of keeping score, but there was a by-election very recently in Bay of Quinte,
yes.
And the NDP once again found itself in its traditional third spot, and it was the Liberals who were the alternative to the Conservatives who won. How discouraging was that?
Well, look, I don't like to lose, just so we're all clear. I don't care if it's second or third, I don't like to lose. And so we take those very seriously, and I will absolutely, for us, there's lessons that we have to learn, we have to move forward. But we did increase our vote We have to keep moving forward, and we will learn from those things. And I can tell you, because Laura Walton is from Bay of Quinte riding, and she and I have had many long conversations about this. But this is not a riding where we've ever really been a particularly strong presence.
Right.
So for us, this past by-election was also about building on the ground, building the volunteer base that we're going to need in a general election, which is very different from a by-election, to move and to translate support into actual votes. And I would say as well, we have a candidate there who I found just extraordinary, Amanda Robertson, who I am really hoping that in the next general election, we can actually elect as an MPP in the province of Ontario.
Okay. Here's another one of those airy-fairy poli-sci questions. We have seen in France, we have seen in British Columbia, that when opposition parties cooperate, they can defeat those that they collectively want to defeat, but they seem to be more rivalrous with one another than sometimes with the government in power. My question is this: can you imagine a scenario where, since you and Bonnie Crombie and Mike Schreiner all want Doug Ford out, you cooperate in some kind of strategic way to do that?
Steve, I am running to form a majority government in the province of Ontario. And as I said, I am reaching out because I believe, I feel it in my bones that we can do it. We have the power, we have the message, and we have the strong official opposition caucus. I mean, we have MPPs in every corner of this province. We are going to work so hard. I am going to fight real hard, and we are going to be ready when that general election is called. And I could get the political nerd thing going here with you too about how that all works, but I think it's really different in our electoral system. I am a big fan, as people here, many will know, of electoral reform. And that, frankly, is how we get grown-up government, how we actually get governments that work together, that cooperate. But any government, but I can tell you, as right now, when Liberals put forward good policy, we will support it. When Greens put forward good policy, we will support. Even Conservatives, when they put forward good policy, we will support it.
Have they done that yet?
Not so often. A couple times. But we also look for their support, and we do work together. And I would like a government. I would like to be a government and to form a government that could work in a more cooperative way on behalf of the people of Ontario.
Well, maybe you could help us understand this. This is not exactly a government without its difficulties.
Yes.
There is an RCMP investigation into Greenbelt-related malfeasance. There is controversy over closing the Science Centre, which has its birthday today, incidentally. It's the same age as you.
I know. I thank you for pointing that out.
Okay. There's $225 million to end a Brewers agreement a year early. There's lots of stuff that you and the current government don't agree on. And yet, they've been in first place in the polls for about 6 straight years. Can you explain why that is?
Well, I think first of all, I think 2022, I think a lot of people were willing to give maybe the government the benefit of the doubt after the pandemic. But I really feel right now that when people's attention is focused in a general election, that it will be very clear that this government isn't serving their needs. We've talked, or I spoke in my speech a little bit about what we see as the major issues for most Ontarians. It's the lack of adequate health care. Emergency rooms are closed when you show up there, or 2.5 million people don't have access to a family physician or a nurse practitioner, primary care. The housing crisis, the affordability crisis. And I'll tell you, I don't know if you were going to ask me about this, but when I hear the Premier making comments like he's made over the last few days, well, first of all, I think he's trying to distract and detract a little from, I think, some really serious issues that people have. And it's not to say that, obviously homelessness and housing, these are very serious issues, but I think that he's putting out divisive comments to distract from where people are really at and what they're feeling. and experiencing out there. And I think it is a deeply irresponsible approach as well. You know, that kind of, I'll tell you why I worry about it, and I think, I mean, I'm hearing from people of all political stripes that they're concerned about this too, is, you know, as premier, the least you should do, and this is public service, is take responsibility. You are the premier, you are the government. If people are losing their homes, that's on you. If they don't have a family doctor, that's on you. And so I think there are times when he can distract a little, and but when it really comes down to it, and people are asked at the ballot box, you know, what is the vision of Ontario that they want to see? What does their future look like? Is my experience today any better than it was 6 years ago? They're going to say, no, it's not, and it's time for change.
Do you think people cut him more slack because he's kind of folksy?
Possibly. You know, we're certainly familiar with his way of doing things here in the city of Toronto, and that's possible. But again, I mean, I think you can only get away with that for so long. People out there, regular people, middle-class people, are experiencing things that they've never experienced before. And I talked about my own personal experience, right? But I cannot get over the fact that Ontario is a have-not province. And I'll tell you that I've had a certain premier out west remind me of that a few times lately, because, you know, it's shocking that that's where we're at today. And we shouldn't have to be here. And I think that that this will become more and more clear. This is becoming more and more clear to Ontarians. They see through that.
Let me do a couple of quick more ones, and then we'll get this audience in here. We're less than 6 weeks to go before the American presidential election. Yeah. If you had a vote in that election, do I assume you're not a Trump voter?
You can absolutely assume that.
Okay.
Yes.
Wanted to confirm that.
Yes. No okay. Trump for me.
Okay.
Love Kamala Harris and Waltz, boy, though.
Okay.
Love that.
Let me ask about that then. Is there anything you've seen Kamala Harris do that you have thought, that's pretty cool, I may want to steal that and bring that up here?
Oh, wow. You know, I think, well, obviously her debate presentation was pretty on the mark. And I think what I saw there is just that ability to cut through and just speak the truth and the facts. And I think that's going to be really, really important, you know, and speaking directly through to the people of the United States. When you're dealing with somebody who is as extreme as, of course, Donald Trump is. But, you know, we've seen that folksiness elsewhere, too, sometimes. You know, you've got to really cut right through that to the heart of the matter. And I think speaking like she did, for example, just one of the examples in the debate, and as she's spoken since about abortion rights, reproductive rights, you know, to talk about the actual situation, what that means for a real person. I think that just... You know, I think it cut right through a lot of the noise to the heart of the issue for a lot of people. It's really important.
Okay, let me get some questions in from the floor now. And I'm going to shorten them. Won't necessarily read them all out just to save us some time here. Healthcare, as an issue, is not necessarily a partisan issue. We've seen all three parties in power over the last 35 years. Nobody seems to be able to get rid of hallway medicine. Nobody seems to be able to keep ERs open. Nobody seems to be able to make a dent in the fact that, what is it now, 2 million Ontarians don't have a family doctor. Can you really tell this audience you have some ideas that are so unique that you will somehow be able to do something no one else has figured out so far?
Yes. Yes, I do. And here's why. I mean, first of all, I think that we've been on this road for a while. This didn't start with the Ford government. I think that because we have failed to make some of the investments and some of the changes that we need to make early on, we've landed in this situation. You know, a lot of this does come down to human resources, right? It's about people and people in those jobs as healthcare workers. It's doctors and nurses and other healthcare workers who have now become even more burned out, who feel disrespected, who have been fighting in the courts to have their proper compensation and collective bargaining rights. And I think that a lot of those issues, we've seen them coming for 30 years. So I don't think we can just blame this government. But it's time that we rolled up our sleeves and took some significant and dramatic action on that part, right? Like, we have got to recruit and retain those workers, but to retain them, we have to start treating them with respect. And and I'm going to say it, we've got to close the door to the bleeding of our healthcare dollars into the private sector, because it is costing us so much more. I mean, we are going to continue going down this road, and it is Ontarians who will literally pay the price. They are right now. So we have to make significant change. We have to do it urgently, and that's one of the reasons why I just do not think we could afford 2 more years or 4 more years or 1 more second of this government.
Okay. Some of these questions you've dealt with in your speech, so I'm going to go past these. Some of these questions are frankly just layups. They're too easy for you, so I'm not going to give them, you know. Marit, will you commit that new housing built with the support of the province will be built using unionized construction labor? Well, what's she going to say to that, I wonder? You know, come on.
Yes.
I'm not going to give you that one. Not going to give you that one. No. That one doesn't count. Okay. My kid's school roof is literally falling in. Meanwhile, Doug Ford wants to dig a tunnel under the 401. What's your plan to fix our education infrastructure is the question.
Yeah, okay, well, this is one of my favorite topics, can I tell you? Look, we don't even know how big the capital repair backlog is right now, because we used to be able to get those numbers from the government, and they're just not making it possible. But we know that it's somewhere in a range of 16.8 billion or more. So we are way, way, way behind. And I will just say this, we have to change the way that we fund education. We have to change that formula. We've talked about it for so long, but until we actually address it, we're going to continue to see leaky roofs. We're going to continue to see packed classrooms, and most important of all, we are going to still have kids not getting the support that they need. We've seen, speaking of respect, educational assistants leaving the classrooms like we cannot attract them. And so it's the kids who are the most vulnerable, who need the most support, who are getting it, and then all kids are suffering.
But changing the education funding formula means what, actually?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, it means basing the way we fund education not on bums in seats, but on the needs of individual students. And that's the fundamental part of it. And then I think, in terms of the infrastructure, schools, like everything else, and I just want to add, it is not just schools that are crumbling in this province. You know, I was out in Tweed a few weeks ago, if anybody saw that, but I was in Tweed because the mayor of Tweed had come to me so many times and said, we are at wit's end. Tweed has 53 bridges, Tweed. They are responsible for all their roads and all their bridges, and they're falling apart. They're reaching that 100-year lifespan, and they're falling apart. And there are communities all across Ontario dealing with the impact, the fallout of all that downloading years ago. We need the government to re-upload, some of that infrastructure responsibility, because otherwise, Mr. Ford can talk all he wants about not raising taxes, but taxes are being raised in communities, on the backs of residents of those communities, by municipalities, because they have no other choice. So we've got to do something about it.
Doug, Premier Ford did do that as it relates to the Gardiner Expressway and the Don Valley Parkway.
It's a start.
You support that then? It's
a start. I mean, if you can do it for Toronto, you should be doing it for other communities as well, all across this province.
Questioner here says, the NDP often gets critiqued by their opponents as weak on managing the economy. How would you respond to that?
I would say we are a have-not province right now in Ontario right here. I would say look at how New Democrat governments across this country, but particularly in the West, where the NDP was founded, look at how they have run things. Fiscal responsibility is in our DNA, actually. It's who we are. We don't take it lightly, as I said. For me, the role we play, it's public service. And so it's our responsibility to manage that in the most responsible way. And when it comes to the economy, as I said, and part of our housing strategy is about bolstering the economy, right? We also sometimes have to be there to nudge things along, right?
Okay, apologies, but this one's going to out your age, because the question is, Today, Ontario Science Centre celebrates its 55th birthday. The building was unceremoniously closed by the Ford government. As Premier, how will you stand up for Ontario's treasured institutions, is the question.
Yeah, thank you for that again. It was actually a proposal from my staff team that said, you know, Marit, we just noticed that you have basically the same birthday as the Ontario Science Centre, and you were born on the same day, like of the same year. Let's have a big party. And I said, are you kidding me? I'm past that point where I'm celebrating right now. I mean, but look, you know, the Ontario Science Centre should never have been closed down. It is a shame. It's shameful that it fell into any disrepair. It's a stretch for the government to say that it's better off to shut it down and move it. You know, this has never been about fixing the Science Centre or building a better Science Centre. This has only ever been about a rationale to build a luxury spa in downtown Toronto at Ontario Place. I'll say it. And so you can absolutely count on us. It breaks my heart because I see the government, dismantling it right now. They need to stop. They need to stop. And it isn't just the people of Toronto that care about this. As I travel around the province, everybody is angry about this. I think Doug Ford has overstepped. I think we know some of the reasons why. But absolutely, you can count on me to save the Science Centre, yeah.
In its current location.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, let's face it, it's not like, this is a unique and architecturally important space as well. But it's also in a space that, it's not going to be easy to build anything else there anyways. We need to preserve it.
Okay, here's one says, under the Ford government, there's been a noticeable effort to court support among blue-collar and unionized workers who have traditionally been supporters of the NDP, and I would add parenthetically, with a considerable amount of success. The Conservatives took seats not so much from the Liberals in the last election, but from the New Democrats. What is your plan to get them back?
Well, first of all, I think it is extremely important that when we talk about any of the issues that we talk about, that we are connecting back to the very real issues that people are struggling with. Working people are dealing with affordability issues, the lack of family doctors. I was in Sault Ste. Marie not long ago talking to steelworkers there. Some of them didn't vote for the NDP last time, right? Like you said. But they just lost, 10,000 of them just lost their family doctors because they lost their connection to the community health center, which they founded. It's really shameful. And so, connecting on the issues that matter to everybody. But I also think we have to speak to the vision and the need for prosperity, for hope, for opportunity. We have to talk about the economy. We have to talk about creating jobs. This is at the heart of how we're going to actually bring back Ontario. And so I think those are the issues that really connect with working people. But the other thing is, frankly, and we know this, they'll show up, and talk about certain issues at rallies, but you'll never see them on a picket line. And I'm not afraid to talk about the importance of having strong labor legislation. Protections for working people. I think we have to really, understand and get back to our roots there as well.
When Bob Rae was Premier, one of the first things he did was pass anti-scab legislation.
That's right.
Would that come back?
Absolutely. I think we've how many times have we tabled it, Jamie West? We have tabled anti-scab legislation in Ontario 17 times, and every government has voted it down. Yeah.
Okay. I understand we've got some young people here today, some students. Where are they?
I know there's some
hands
here.
Over here. Okay, so this one I hope will be of more interest to you. The question is, young people seem more disaffected and disengaged from politics than ever before. What's your plan to inspire them, to get them to the polls to vote?
Well, see, now first of all, I'm going to say this. I'm not seeing that right now. In fact, as I go around the province, I'm seeing a lot more young people really engaged than I've seen in a really long time. Engaged and interested and excited. But when I've been asked that before, and I will say, and it is one of the reasons, by the way, that I decided to run for leader of the NDP in the first place was because of just generally low voter turnout, but also that issue of like, how do we engage future generations, this new generations? And I believe it's on us, right? I think that rather than telling young people what they should find important and why they should vote for us, we need to go to them and say, what matters to you? What is the vision that you need from the province of Ontario? If we're not getting young people to vote, then that's on us. So I encourage young people to get involved, to share their ideas, their activism, their energy. But I want to say, it is on all of us here if we are not speaking to the things that matter to them. And I will say, I think there are a lot of big things on young people's minds right now that I'm hearing. Certainly post-secondary education is a big one. But also, I think young people are really, really, really concerned about the impact of climate change. They're dealing with housing and affordability issues in a way that many of us haven't had to. And then for people like me who have young adult children, I think we're one of the first generations that is now worried that our kids may not do as well as we did. And that is terrifying. So my answer, I guess, I want to bring it to a high point here somehow, but is we all, as leaders in this room, because I know it's not just in politics, it's in everywhere, we have to step up, fight for the things that are going to matter to future generations, and not be afraid to take some bold steps that will actually shift things for the future.
That's our time. Thanks for the chat.
Steve, can I not just say, before we go, you asked me about why I got involved in politics, but what you didn't mention is that you were one of the first people that ever said to me, I think one day you'll be leader of this party, you should run for this party. Didn't you say that to me once?
You were a school board trustee at the time, and that was over a private lunch, Marit. I'm surprised you would...
Anyways,
surprised you would raise that.
I know,
but anyway.
I think you were saying, the reason I mention it is that I think, it meant a lot to me at the time. And I will say that like so many people, we don't think about running for office or stepping up for any kind of leadership position often until somebody asks us or just says, wow, I see that in you. So thank you for seeing that in me. And I hope we all do that, talk to somebody else that we think could step up and step forward because it can make a huge difference. So thank you.
Not at all. Okay, thanks. Well done.
Good for you.
I thought you were going to raise it.
Thank you, Steve and Marit. I'm going to let you take your seats while I invite up to the stage our appreciation remarks. You've given us so much to consider, Steve, when it comes to the challenges and opportunities facing Ontario. So thank you again for that enlightening conversation. Next, it is my pleasure to introduce Lee Caprio. He's the business manager and financial secretary at IBEW Local 353. Please join me in welcoming him to the stage.
Bonjour and welcome to everyone. I didn't realize I had so much in common with Marit. I too come from outside of Ontario in a small hometown in northern Quebec, and I came to Ontario for opportunity, and I'm glad I'm here today. We also share a very unique name, and my real name is, did they put it up? Yeah. My real name is actually Liarco, which means rainbow in Italian, but don't tell everybody that, okay? But having said that, I want to thank Marit, and especially this opportunity today with Steve, who, Steve, you're a consummate professional and you're fantastic at your job. But I have to admit that Marit made it really easy for you, because to hear those comments from the leadership of the opposition was phenomenal. And I thank you, Marit, for those comments. As the leader of the IBEW Local 353 in Toronto, we've been a local since 1903, so for the last 121 years, we've represented unionized workers. I now represent 13,000 licensed electricians and indentured apprentices in Southern Ontario, and I'm very proud to say that each and every one of my members is a proud union member. I'm also a member of the Provincial and Construction Building Trades, which is the reason why I'm here today, because Mark Arsenault couldn't be here. So I hope I'll do him well on this one. But that council has been representing workers in the construction industry in Ontario since 1957. Our mission has always been to give workers a voice in their workplace, to help ensure that we have the highest trained, most highly skilled workers available to the construction industry, and I think Marit touched on that. We promote safety, great working conditions, fair wages, pensions, and benefits for each and every one of our members and their families. As such, my union in particular, but all unions, are dedicated to bettering the lives of our members. We know that good union jobs lead to great retirements, dignified retirements, and not only that, but bettering the lives of the members themselves, their families, but also our communities. Electricity, as we all know, is an essential thing that we use every day. It's probably one of the most vital aspects that we notice when it's not there. And keeping it safe and reliable is of the utmost importance. And I want to thank Marit again for her comments on those. Whether it's hydro, wind, solar, and in particular nuclear, having the most highly skilled, trained, licensed individuals to protect those systems is of the utmost importance. Because in order to keep everything safe and reliable, we have to rely on everybody's skills. And we train the best, and I'm very proud of that. So I'm glad to hear that you were saying that unionized workers are going to be part of your vision. We don't just stop there. We work with community network groups to ensure that we give career opportunities to racialized groups, underserviced communities, and especially equity-seeking groups. Now, let me be clear. We don't provide jobs. As a Red Seal trade, we do not provide jobs. We provide careers. This leads to licensure. This is why it's important for our apprentices to be indentured, to be registered. This is why it's important, because those licenses in our pockets are just as valuable as a doctor's license, a lawyer's license, a nurse's license. We work hard for those licenses in our apprenticeship, and we train our apprentices well. But if the government isn't going to look at us as a viable source for the future in terms of skilled trades, then we have a problem. We have to protect our youth, we have to protect our young people by giving them opportunities and careers, not jobs. And right now, when divisions are far too entrenched in our society, it is the most important to have moments like this where we can share our ideas, and so we can find a pathway to move forward together. Marit understands this very well. We were speaking earlier, and I said, do you remember when you were at the opening of my good friend, and a very good friend, George Chavallo, which some of you might know, his community center opened up in her riding, and she came and spoke to everyone there that's being serviced by that community center, and they were touched by that. That shows how much community means to Marit, and thank you so much again. I also want to thank you for your wonderful comments on how you see Ontario being a better place. I think that this was an eye-opener for a lot of us. We've been waiting for a very energetic opposition leader to give us those ideas and to present them the way you did. I believe this was your Kamala Harris debate moment. And we all know that your party, the NDP, values the partnership with Labour, and that's important to us. But it's discussions like this that lead us to be re-energized in those values. But finally, I want to thank the Ontario Federation of Labour, the Construction Trades Council. We are proud sponsors of this event today. But also, I want to thank all the sponsors, because without you, none of us could be here today to hear these wonderful words of encouragement. And especially to the Empire Club for hosting us today. So once again, I want to thank Marit, Steve, Laura, Jenna, the OFL, Construction Building Trades, but most of all, I want to thank each and every one of you for actually coming here today and listening, because it's events like this that unite our ideas and let us build a better future. So thank you so much.
Well, I couldn't have said it better myself. Folks, we're in the final stretch, so thank you all for being with us. I want to thank our speakers and our sponsors one last time, all of you for being with us today. And I also just wanted to say that today's event is a great success, in part because of the tremendous work of Rob Halpin from the OFL and Chris Watson, a dedicated Empire Club volunteer. And finally, Steve, you noted our students and young leaders in the room from Humber College and U of T. They all have a copy of your book, so hopefully you have a couple minutes so they can get signatures from the author after the fact. Thank you all for being a part of our community, helping advance public dialogue on topics that matter. Of course, we saw that in today's conversation. These are not just important, they're necessary, that conversations that we need to be having. They remind us why we all come together here at the Empire Club, to engage in these conversations, to consider and reimagine how we might shape our future. So for that, I thank you all. And I'd like to, at this point, say thank you for joining us. This meeting is now adjourned. Have a lovely afternoon.